Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, with all the kind of crappy news in the cruising industry and around the world right now, I thought maybe dress up a little bit more festive. And hopefully things are going to get a little happier over the next week. Now, we did have that story that I told you yesterday about Cunard. Having to isolate people in New York City. And boy, the more I read about this story, the stranger it gets, but it does serve as a very good cruise warning for everybody out there looking to sail. Just a quick recap of what's happening. The Cunard Queen Mary 2 was on a transatlantic cruising. It arrived in New York, and apparently 10 passengers have to be isolated in New York. But the story seems to be much wilder than that, according to passengers, but none of it has been verified. And that's what's kind of crazy to me. I don't understand what seems to be going on. But some news media interviewed a lot of the passengers on board, and they came out saying there's like 50 cabins worth of people in isolation, and they're all going to have to go to the Holiday Inn in New York, and they're all going to have to be isolated. And there was a full corridor quarantined off, and another corridor completely quarantined off. And okay, wait a minute. Wait a minute. How did we go to several corridors quarantined off for quarantine people from 10 people? Is it the close contacts and things like that? Well, close contacts don't have to self-isolate, they get retested. That's what happens with close contacts. You get retested. Once you're retested, you're okay. But a lot of people misconcept and misconstrue when they're going up. So, for instance, I was on a cruise ship, and when I'm walking up the stairs, I walk up the stairs, I get to one deck, on one of the lower decks, and bam, it's the fire doors are closed, the flood doors are closed, and you can't get down there. That's a quarantined off section. It doesn't mean anybody's in there. It does say quarantine section and stuff like that, but that doesn't mean there's actually people in that passenger. Just because you can't walk up and down the corridor, they don't want you walking up and down the corridor of a quarantine section. You see what? So some people might see that and say, hey, no, you know what? That whole section must be quarantined. Wow, there's like 50 cabins in there. Or there could be 50 cabins in there and people are isolated because they're close contacts, etc. We don't know, but the story just goes a little bit wild in that. Like, as of right now, the only people I know that are going to have to quarantine are the 10 people who have tested positive. They will quarantine in New York until they pass the test and are then let free, shall we say. But there's a big warning in here. It's not so much that they caught COVID. It's not so much that there might have been COVID on the ship, but you know, there's some things in here that just seemed a little odd, and I thought I should let everybody know because it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big warning. But before I get into that warning, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, so you're up to date with all these types of news stories and cruise warnings, so you're not caught off guard like some of the people on this cruise ship. And by the way, it really helps the channel out, and I would really appreciate it. It doesn't cost anything, it just lets you know a video is out. Okay, passengers were saying just to get on the ship they had to have their full doses of vaccine, both doses, and they had to have a test before getting on board. Sounds great. That's what every cruise line should be doing. No, but then they said, but to get on the ship, they ended up lining up for like 2 hours in this corridor, and they were all kind of in, you know, that dark humor that everybody has every once in a while when you're in a good mood and you're heading off on your cruise for the holidays. And, you know, well, if we didn't have COVID before, we're going to have it now. ha ha ha, and then it happens. It's not so funny anymore. But they're all getting like, why are we all lined up this close together in this smaller enclosed area for this long? So it doesn't really matter how good your protocols are on the ship if you line people up for hours on end all together to get on your ship. So there might have been a breakdown there in the protocols. This is just what people have been reporting. I haven't seen it. I don't know where they're lining up right now. I haven't been to the UK during the pandemic. So, if anyone who's cruised before knows that sometimes there can be huge lineups and huge queues. Now, here's the warning. People have been asking for their money back, and the cruise line has been saying, "Oh, you don't get a refund. Talk to your insurance company." And I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. If you catch COVID on board, do you not get covered with Cunard? And so I went, I'm going to be honest, I don't book a lot of Cunard cruises, and I don't think I've booked any since the pandemic. So I went in and I started to look through their terms of service and through their safety sale and their rebooking and what happens if you test positive before getting all the shit. They tell you a lot of things about how you can change your things into future cruise credits. They tell you a lot of this stuff. And they also tell you, what happens if you catch COVID before getting to there. But there's nothing about what happens if you catch COVID on board, other than they strongly recommend that you have insurance that covers COVID while you're on the cruise. So it doesn't seem like they have put in their terms of service that if you catch COVID on board, or if your trip is interrupted because of COVID on the ship, that you're going to get a refund. Now, I did go. I've gone to Celebrity. I've gone to Princess. I've gone to Norwegian. I've gone to Royal Caribbean. And they all have right there in their terms, if you catch COVID on our ship, what the processes are. You'll be isolated. You'll be flown home. You'll receive either your full money back or a portion of your money back up to the time where you got sick at the company's expense. They will fly you home. They will quarantine all that if you catch COVID on board. But I didn't see it on Cunard, and I looked up and down. And that is a big warning right now. So any cruise line you're choosing to sail on, whether it's Costa, MSC, Carnival, Norwegian, Royal, some of the larger, Oceania, Azamara, every cruise line, go in and see and look for those words. What happens if I catch COVID on the cruise? Not before the cruise, not anything like that. Not can I cancel my cruise within 48 hours of getting on there, but what actually happens if I catch it on the ship? Because I know what happens with the cruise lines I've been sailing on, because I double check those things thoroughly, but I haven't had to go to Cunard yet. And I haven't had to go to Oceania yet. I haven't gone to Azamara yet. So, yes, look at your cruise, double check your cruise, and if you're still going to sail and they don't have that kind of stuff mentioned, make sure you have COVID insurance. Because some of these people could be out £7,000, which in American dollars is about $12,000 for some of these sailings and cabins that they just came across on the Queen Mary 2. Who knows? Cunard may reimburse them. We don't know, but the passengers are saying this is what they're being told right now when they're asking for refunds or money. In fact, the people going into quarantine don't even know who's covering the cost of the hotel right now. Is it New York? Is it the passengers? Is it Cunard? Is it anybody? Well, somebody's going to fit the bill. And you know in the end, you're the person in the hotel. And if no one else has paid for it, they're going to be asking you for that money. So we'll keep an eye on what happens with these passengers. But it just got stranger and stranger every time I read this story. But I said, you know what? I better get this warning out to everybody who's sailing in the next 60 days. Make sure they have a policy of what happens if you catch COVID on the cruise ship, and make sure if they don't, that you're darn well covered with your own insurance, because 10-day stay in a New York hotel is way more money than some people ever expect that could possibly be. Well, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Till next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.